Remember back in the day when Didier Drogba played for Chelsea, they could always rely on him to step up when it mattered most. The ultimate example being the Champions League final in 2012 when he scored an 88th minute equaliser and the winning penalty in a shootout against Bayern Munich. He was essentially the ultimate big game player. But since he's left, it's felt like Chelsea just haven't been able to replace him, even though we've seen some big names come through, such as Torres, Lukaku and Aubameyang. Of course, they're big boots to fill, but they've spent an absolute fortune buying strikers who just haven't lived up to the expectation. Because of that, every new striker that Chelsea buys, the same question is asked: is this finally the one? Now it's Joao Pedro's turn. They've bought him for 60 million quid with 8 years on the contract. No pressure, right? But here's the thing, if you're only judging him by his goals, you'll completely miss what makes Joao Pedro so dangerous. Because the scariest thing about him isn't when he scores, it's all the work he puts in before. His Chelsea debut was a bit of a whirlwind. He just signed, barely knew his teammates' names, and joined the team midway into the Club World Cup. He was thrown on in the semi-final against boyhood club Fluminense, which I imagine could be a bit overwhelming for a young player. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, he scores twice, and then a few days later he faces PSG, the 2025 Champions League winners, and scores again. He seemed completely unfazed and showed he can deliver when the pressure's on, just like Didier Drogba once did. And that mentality didn't just appear out of thin air, because to really understand where that comes from, we have to go back in time and take a look at where Joao Pedro started. He was born in Ribeirão Preto, Sao Paulo, a football-mad city but not an easy place to grow up, especially since he grew up without his father being around. His dad, Jose, was a footballer too, playing for Botafogo, but his story took a darker turn. In 2002, when Joao was just a baby, his dad was arrested as an accessory to murder and sentenced to 16 years in prison. He got out in 2010, but a year later he was back behind bars again, this time for threatening people with a gun in public. Not exactly the ideal role model, but it did force Joao to grow up fast. With his dad gone, it was up to his mum Flavia to try and hold the family together. And so she did what many strong mothers do. She packed up their bags and decided to move to another city. In this case, they moved to Rio de Janeiro, chasing a better life. Here's where Fluminense helped out. The club didn't just give Joao the opportunity to play football, they also helped the family get back on their feet financially. With the sacrifices his family, and especially his mum, had made, Joao felt like he owed it to them to pursue his career seriously. He has said it himself, family is everything for him, and that he wants to give his mother, Flavia, and his grandmother, Dalva, the best life possible because of what they have done for him. He even has their names tattooed on his arms and kisses them before he walks onto the pitch, as this is his way of remembering the people who've had his back from the start. This kind of struggle gave him drive and motivation and started shaping the way he played, as he wanted to influence the game as much as he could. So from the moment he arrived at Fluminense, it became clear that he wasn't going to play in one position for long. Because the thing that a lot of people don't know about Joao Pedro is that when he first joined Fluminense, he actually played as a defensive midfielder, just like his dad once did for Botafogo. But there was a problem, as he wasn't really suited to sit back and help the defense like a Fabinho or a Fernandinho. He wanted the ball and do something with it up the pitch. So as he grew taller and stronger, the coaches at Fluminense started pushing him further forward. He went from defensive midfielder to attacking midfielder, and eventually he became the team's number 9, which was actually a pure coincidence to begin with. When the team's main striker got promoted to the under-20s, Joao was asked to fill in up front. This could have gone horribly wrong, as he'd never played as a striker before, but instead of failing, he actually managed to score 38 goals in his first season, and suddenly everyone at the club realised, okay, wow, this kid is special. What helped him as well was that he had a role model at the club that he could look up to, Richarlison. He apparently spent hours watching Richarlison train at Fluminense, specifically the movement up front, together with the finishing and the use of both feet. That's where Joao says his versatility has come from, being able to play wide, drop deep, or lead the line himself. But it wasn't just the goals that impressed the coaches at Fluminense. They apparently also loved his attitude, pointing out that he had a positive influence on the group as a whole, showing early indications of having leadership skills. So, by the time he was 17, the word was well and truly out. According to reports, Manchester City, Liverpool, and Barcelona were all interested. But it was Watford, who had also signed Richarlison in 2017, that made the first real move. And just like that, at the age of 18, Joao Pedro's journey from Brazil to Europe began. On paper, it looked like the perfect move, a Premier League club and being able to follow in his idol's footsteps. But as we so often see, football rarely sticks to the script. Because when Joao arrived at Watford in January 2020 after signing for £10 million, the timing couldn't have been any worse. He was basically still a kid, leaving Brazil for the first time, travelling to a completely new country and having to learn a new language. And on top of that, just as he landed, the world in football shut down due to COVID. When it returned, the Premier League dream he'd imagined had completely changed. Watford had gone down to the Championship, one of the most physical and unforgiving leagues in the world. That's where Joao had to learn the hard way. Cold Tuesday nights at Stoke, empty stadiums and defenders twice his size trying to knock him off the ball. It was a tough introduction to English football, but he adapted, and little by little he started scoring some goals. He actually scored the first one on his 19th birthday. I mean, they weren't Haaland numbers, of course, he's a robot, but it was enough to make people realise that this kid had something, and by 21 he was sometimes even handed the captain's armband. It showed, as was also the case at Fluminense, that he didn't just have talent but was also a leader in the making. Watford had basically given him a crash course in English football, but now he was ready for the next step, and that next step came at Brighton, a club well known for their talent scouting. They just lost some key players such as Robert Sanchez and Moises Caicedo, so when they made Joao Pedro a striker, their record transfer at £30 million in 2023, not everyone at the club was convinced, because many expected that money to be spent on replacements in defence or midfield. Questions were also asked whether he was ready for the Premier League and if he was even worth that kind of money. So that instantly put pressure on him and made his debut all the more important to get off to a good start. But luckily for Brighton fans, he didn't disappoint. On his debut against Luton, he won a penalty, then grabbed the ball himself and scored it. A couple of weeks later, in Europe, he made Brighton history. Against AEK Athens, he scored Brighton's first ever goals in a European competition, 2 penalties taken with ease. But he didn't stop there. He went on to score 6 goals in the Europa League group stage, which put him among the tournament's top scorers. And in the league, his impact was also felt. Brighton's attack looked sharper and more unpredictable with him as their striker. By the end of his first season, he'd scored 19 goals in all competitions, finishing as Brighton's joint top scorer. The next season, he picked up where he'd left off. In 2 seasons at Brighton, he scored 30 goals in 70 games, showing he could be reliable and consistent, still only in his early 20s and looking like a complete forward. But it wasn't all smooth sailing though, because in April 2025 he picked up the first red card of his career, a straight red for kicking out at a Brentford player when Brighton lost 3-1. This incident came after he escaped a red card for elbowing another Brentford player the year before. Perhaps he just doesn't like Brentford. Joao also missed a couple of games during the 24-25 season after a training ground clash with teammate Jan Paul van Hekke. But I think his coach at the time, Fabian Hertzler, put it best. He said, "Joao is still a young player. He will grow and I'm sure he will learn from this and come back stronger next season. I'm really looking forward to seeing him renewed and reinvigorated at his highest peak." And Hertzler was right. He did come back stronger and ready for the next step, but just not at Brighton. Because when Enzo Maresca took over at Chelsea, he started looking around for a striker who could fit his system, as Nicholas Jackson was deemed not good enough fit for that system, and Joao Pedro caught his eye. To understand why he thought Pedro would be a good fit, we have to understand the way Maresca likes his teams to play football. His style has definitely been shaped by his time under Pep Guardiola, as it's quite similar in a sense and was used successfully in his time at Leicester. It's a possession-based setup, building patiently from the back and using fullbacks who drift into the midfield to overload the centre, while wingers stay wide to stretch the pitch. His teams are usually quite fluid, defending in a 4-3-3 but attacking in a 3-2-5. And when they lose the ball, they press high and try to win it back within seconds, kind of similar to the famous Jurgen Klopp gegenpress. Joao Pedro seems to have all the tools he needs to fit well into this system, and has the kind of energy Maresca needs his striker to have. But we also have to be honest, with Chelsea spending £60 million on him with an 8-year contract, it comes with certain expectations. You essentially get judged on everything you do, not just the goals you score. Sure, scoring goals is the main thing he's there to do, and when he's scoring goals, fans will be happy. But if he goes a couple of games without a goal, every miss, every bad touch, or every time he seems a little off or not showing the right attitude, people will notice and scrutinise him. Maresca recently admitted that his team struggles when they face teams that play with deep, compact defences, and that's where Joao's biggest test lies. If the spaces he normally thrives in disappear, and he's isolated from the rest of the team, what will he do? Again, he's not Drogba, so he's not going to bully 2 centre-backs to the goal line and wrestle his way through. You can actually already see exactly this problem in some of Chelsea's recent matches. He's worked hard but looked isolated, pressing alone and not getting any service, and sometimes becoming a passenger in the game. But I guess it's also up to Maresca to adapt and figure out a way to get the best out of Pedro in these types of games. Against Nottingham Forest, for example, he dropped Joao into the number 10 role and put Marc Guiu on as an extra striker. This seemed to work. Joao could combine, find space, and still arrive late into the box. Perhaps this is what Chelsea need to do in these types of games, play another striker alongside him. After that game against Nottingham, Maresca pointed it out as well. He said, "We know Joao can play as a 9 or as a 10, he's very good in both, but probably when he has another striker next to him, he plays even better." So it's clear that if Chelsea were looking for another Didier Drogba, they haven't found him in Joao Pedro. But here's the encouraging part. He's still only young and has showed that he has all the tools to make it work in Maresca's Chelsea. He might not score 25 goals a season, but the work he puts in for the team, initiating the press, coming deep to pick up the ball, and freeing up space for other teammates, he might just be the one to make the system work and finally break the Chelsea striker curse. Be sure to check out the next video on the screen, and if you enjoyed this one, please consider giving it a thumbs up.